Hello and welcome to my shop. This video is going to review of the Veritas Sharpening System. I've had this thing for 9 months now and I've put it through its paces. So I'm going to go over its pros and cons and also compare it to the Mark II. So let's get started. The first plus is its plunger design. It's really simple. It's just a threaded knob in here with a large base, and from wide planer blades down to 1/4-inch chisels, I've never had this thing slip at all. Once you crank it down, it holds really well. So thumbs up to that design. The second big positive is that this costs a lot less than the Mark II. This kit sells for 48 bucks American on the Lee Valley site, whereas to get into the Mark II category, you need to buy essentially both the narrow and the wide head in order to be equivalent in features to the sharpening system. And with both of these things, I think it's something like $120. So it's quite a bit more money. So you can take that into account with how that affects your budget. And finally, another big positive that the sharpening system has, even over the Mark II, is that one head will do all widths. A 1/4-inch chisel all the way through a 2-inch planer blade fit in here. Whereas with the Mark II, you need to get 2 separate heads to accomplish the same thing. And furthermore, because there's only, unless you buy 2 of these flat rollers, if you're alternating sharpening jobs between something narrow and something wide, now you're taking the heads off and swapping between bases. Not a huge deal, but sharpening isn't really a fun activity. We're here to do woodworking, not to fuss around with little tools. So that's a big plus for the sharpening system. It's a single piece. So now let's get into the cons as I see them. Number one is that the angle setter that comes with the kit, it's hard to use. I'm really not a big fan of it. Basically, if you haven't seen it, on this hexagon, whatever it is, each one of these sides is a different angle. And to choose the angle you wish, you move it around until you see the one that's marked in there, and you line up until it's perpendicular. So you put the jig on, take a chisel, planer blade or whatever, and you put it in there, just kind of hope it fits, and then you cinch it up. So when I first started using this thing, I would either kneel on the ground so that I could see in there sideways to look for light gaps, or you wind up holding it like this, precariously above your head, and holding up to the light, limiting the gaps, slide it down, tighten. It's good that you see me struggling with this, because this is a good illustration of how finicky this thing can be to use. Alright, so let's pretend that's actually pretty good right now. This 1-inch chisel is easier to set because it doesn't rotate so much. So now that it's in there to the appropriate depth, now I need to square it up. The manual states to use a very small square to fit in there. I don't have a square that small. I'm not going to spend more money to get one that big, so I'll put like a little metal square in there on the side, which isn't that accurate. It's fussy. This is these ones. So if I grab the hard one, a 1/4-inch chisel, this is a nightmare, because the larger blades they seat nicely in the crevice down there. With a 1/4-inch chisel, it's hard to feel where it is. There it is. Slide. So let's see how I did. Way off. Terrible. So this thing blows. It's a nice idea. I think if you're going to go with the Veritas system, I would make up a simple little protrusion jig like this. I'm sure you guys can Google that up and find out more information. But basically, you get the chisel lined up in the jig to the angle you want, and then you just set up the protrusion from the front of the jig. So this block of wood is square, and this guy, I moved it with when the glue was wet, I moved it with the protruding chisel to be where it is. So this is my 25-degree jig. And furthermore, so this does two jobs at once, in that it both squares the chisel to the jig and also sets the right protrusion. So this works pretty well, this little guy. But to me, this is a con that Veritas didn't include something like this in the kit. But I can understand why, because there's so many angles that people want to use with their chisels. It might not be cost effective to do, one for each. And my last con for this jig is that skew chisels are a bear to use, a bear to line up in here. It was actually the primary reason I bought the Mark II is because it has a skew setting jig. There are instructions included in here that describe how to get a skew chisel lined up. You have to maybe turn this a little bit. It's just basically you need 3 hands, maybe 4. It's rough. So basically, to summarize my review, see this as a simple jig, one which you will probably need to make additional equipment to set it up right for. And, you could even make a special protrusion jig for skew chisels. That's an option. And for costing $48 versus $120-something, it might be worth your while. All right, so let's get into comparisons. My first comparison is going to be against the $12 jig you've probably seen on a lot of different sites sold by different names. This thing is far, far inferior to the sharpening system. Don't even waste your money on this thing. Take the $12 and buy an extra chisel. Not only do the chisels not seat accurately within these little notches, once you do get them in there, they tend not to even be level within there. So this is going to charity next time I make a charity run. So let's compare it to the Mark II. So I went ahead and bought the deluxe kit because I enjoy buying tools apparently. So they're fairly similar. The biggest difference one might notice is that the roller on the sharpening system is a little bit more narrow than on the Mark II. It's cool that they included a wide roller, but honestly I've never had an issue with this guy rocking at all. So not a huge deal. And this isn't going to turn into a review of the Mark II. There's plenty of those out there. But my goodness, is this easy to use. I mean, it has the built-in fence. You just load in your chisel. It squares it up for you. And you're done. Isn't that nice? Wow. So this is how sharpening tools should be. Set it and forget it and move on. So there we are. If you guys have any other comments about the sharpening system or what I think about them, feel free to leave them down below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.